Dun da 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 da. Dun da dun 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 da 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 da. Dun 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 da da. Dun 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 da 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 da. You have reached your Two Spirit Aunties podcast. Please leave us a message after the tone. Da 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 da. Recording in progress. Please buckle your seatbelts and put your chair in the upright position. You've reached your Two Spirit Aunties podcast. We hope you're ready to be blown away. What was that one? Was that good?
That was good. I wasn't expecting that.
It sounds like I rehearse it, but I don't.
No.
It just comes out of my mouth. I think part of it is that I live by myself. Well, I mean, I live with my dog Journey, but like I'm the only human that lives here. And since Journey doesn't talk back, I pretty much just talk to myself all the time. And I think that's
I feel like maybe she does talk back. You just don't know.
She talks back with like ignoring me, the look on her face, that kind of thing. But welcome back to your Two Spirit Aunties podcast. I'm Shilo, Cool Babe George, and I'm here with Brianna, Beautiful Glasses, Bragg.
No one can see my glasses, but I did get new ones.
They look amazing.
Thank you.
We do both have amazing glasses. I don't have mine on at the moment because I feel more creative and free in my life when I don't have my glasses on and everything's a little bit blurry.
That feels real. Well, Shilo, what are we doing today? What are we talking about?
Well, we've had 3 podcasts in a row where we've talked about being Two-Spirit. We've had our amazing friends, Jack and Lucas, on. And I think that, that was full of a lot of great information, stories, perspectives. And so today we are going to kind of bring it back and just talk about how we're doing right now. And how we personally are doing and how we see things going nationally. There's some topics we want to talk about, and just checking in with each other and checking in with the folks that are listening to this podcast. We really love you, and we did an in-person event last weekend, so we want to tell you about that as well.
Sounds like a fun packed day. I feel like I came up with a good title for this episode. May I share it at this moment?
Oh, please do. I'm terrible at coming up with titles.
Well, normally I am too, but for some reason I'm really enjoying coming up with episode titles. So The World is on Fire, but at least we had a show. Feels like a good title for the episode. How do you feel about that?
I love it. I mean, isn't that the both and world we live in?
Absolutely. The in-between.
So good. So good. So what are we going to talk about first, Brianna? You're in charge of, starting the conversation, and then we'll just kind of go around like we usually do.
Okay. Well, leaving a dyslexic in charge of the agenda.
No better person, in my opinion, to be in charge of the agenda.
So we had a show, right? Let's talk about the show. We were at Paseo PDX.
Yes.
And that was a lot of fun. How did that feel for you?
It felt really good. I just want to say Paseo is like this once a year, like it's like a multicultural event that was over 6 blocks of the South Park blocks in downtown Portland.
That was packed.
And there was thousands of people there, but it didn't feel scary. Like there was too many people because everybody was, spread out amongst multiple blocks. And we had like an indigenous village that was there with vendors and food, and there was a stage where there was lots of cultural events and presentations and guest speakers and musical guests, and we were one of the pieces of entertainment. And it was really cool. So there was a Two-Spirit drag show that was the beginning of what was supposed to happen, and then Jack. Jack ended up being our amazing and only performer. I mean, we
Yep.
only really needed Jack, honestly. And then we had Lucas there, who was a guest as well. And so it was really like the podcast variety hour, our podcast variety hour live. I really loved it. I was very nervous about the event. I have done a lot of public speaking, so I'm fairly comfortable with public speaking. However, I haven't done a lot of public speaking during the pandemic. So I feel slightly rusty in person. And then we were doing this in the context of like in our community, our Native community together in the context of our podcast, which is really new. And so I think I just felt nervous like, would I be funny? Is this gonna like, make anyone in our community mad at us? Like, I mean, it's a drag show. Like, we're Two Spirit, we're gonna be talking about being Two Spirit and stuff. Like, I could feel the contrary in me. I have a little contrary in me coming out. And I was just like, I knew there would be community members there from our Native community. And I was just like, oh, hopefully they'll think it's funny and not horribly irreverent. So that was some of the anxiety that I was having.
I feel like that should just be a t-shirt that we design. Horribly irreverent. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I love it. Can we write that down on a Google Doc somewhere?
Yeah. Yes.
All of our podcast stuff is
which we will lose promptly.
Saved on Google Docs.
I was also worried about going, but I was worried about like when I saw that there was going to be thousands of people there, my mind was just like, there is too much shit happening in the world to be around that many people. So I was really worried about, COVID. I'm not in big crowds unless everybody is masked right now. And so like that was a little bit scary. But I think that everyone was super respectful and like, there was not anything to actually worry about once I was there, which was kind of cool. I was also a little bit nervous for same reasons that you were. And also because we didn't really know what we were going to say, which is always fun and also slightly anxiety producing. But I think we looked great and people laughed. So I hope they enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it was helpful that we had some sort of little bits in mind that we wanted to do. And I think that helped fill the gaps and gave us enough of a outline or idea that we could just still be very in the moment, which I really liked, and just to go with the crowd and who was there. And so I think it was smart to have those bits and bringing candy and having prizes. And then you had gotten stickers of our podcast logo made. I think though that was all very smart as well, and having things to give people and interact with them. And yeah, so I felt really good about it. I got to see a bunch of people I haven't seen in so long that I had no idea I was going to see. And that was really lovely as well. And I went ahead and gave hugs to people, even though it made me kind of nervous. But I was like, I am tired of not hugging people. So I did give some hugs, and that felt really good. And I think one of my favorite things is, was we were on the stage, and I was really appreciative of the folks, Amanda and other volunteers and organizers. Simona also was an organizer, that they made a ramp for the stage. I was super thankful for that.
How cool was that?
They made it by hand. Like there's so much going on when you're doing events that are just that big. And I just really appreciated that. So lots of love to Amanda and everyone else who helped with that.
Also, like super responsive to access questions beforehand. Like we weren't expecting to be there. We were kind of invited a couple weeks before, because mostly that's how brown people do things. But like, it was great. Everyone was really responsive too, and being there was really fun. I really also appreciated our conversation afterwards, where, as we do, take a thing that we did and make it bigger and have all these other dreams attached to it. So I'm really excited about all of the possibilities moving forward. During the show, we had folks ask us questions. So Dear Two Spirit Aunties style, but live, which was a lot of fun. I don't know how you felt about that, but I loved it.
Oh, I loved it. It was
It was
amazing.
it was so cute to have. We had adults, but we also had little kids get up and just share what was on their mind and what was on their heart, and it was so precious. That it made us kind of want to think about doing that more, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I loved it. And that was so spur of the moment. Like you and I
Mhm.
could have never planned for a couple of youth getting up there and taking the mic. And it is not easy to get up in front of a bunch of strangers. And, that's some serious speaking, public speaking skill and just courage to get up and do that. And for them to talk about personal things about how they were feeling during the pandemic and how hard it was on them. And that was in the middle between Jack changing outfits in the middle of those drag performances. And it was, I think, a really good emotional, there was a lot of emotions in that hour. There was a lot of fun and humor, and then those youth brought us into a really beautiful, real healing place. And then there was fun and dancing again. And then when we talked with Lucas, there was seriousness and also fun. I think it was just a really great connection, collaboration, a mixing of healing and laughter and liberation all together. It just felt really good. And I beloved that some of the youth in our community felt like getting up and sharing with us all. It was such a beautiful gift they gave us.
It was. Yeah. Yeah, and then it made us start talking about what this could look like moving forward too, and possibly going on the road a little bit and meeting other youth that are in the community in different places and being able to talk to them about the things that are on their minds and hearts, which I find really an exciting thought.
I think that's fantastic. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about being a two-spirit auntie, right? Or an auntie just in general, is, offering that space to listen and to validate, to offer help if needed or advice if that's what the person wants. But at the very, basic, just to be there and be like, you're not struggling with this alone. And we're here to listen. And there's just so much honesty and wisdom and brilliance with our youth. And sometimes, a lot of times, our world just ignores the youth, right? And doesn't, it's hard, it can be difficult, even though we may want to carve out spaces to hear their voices because of the urgency and all of the white supremacy and how things work around oppression. It is oftentimes difficult to make that space in certain circumstances. So I think it would be beautiful to go to some different powwows and set up a space to listen and to offer tea and water and some snacks. Maybe some want to be on the podcast and give us their perspective on something, or maybe we can just be there to offer our support. And I think, and just be aunties in that way. And I think that sounds really beautiful and fun and like an adventure. Like who
Mhm.
knows? Who
Yeah.
knows what's going to happen? And to me, that's really exciting and amazing.
Also, just thinking about retrofitting vans for powwow season sounds like a lot of fun as well. Like get
Yeah.
some get some fryers on one side and some espresso machine on the other and be able to just open the doors.
Some bougie and then anti
You know me.
goals right there. I love it. That's pretty good. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that we can do, right, with us coming together with this podcast and being there for our community and how our community is there for us. For me, going to that event, I was there a couple hours early before we went on, and I really appreciated hearing from people in our community that, like, it's been years since I've seen them, since the last time I went to powwow, since I've seen Harold Paul. And it was great to hear him and his family sing and drum and the dancers be there, and to hear, harmonies, poetry. I mean, those are the things that I've really missed. And I think that it's really easy, I'll speak for myself, to get caught up in like what's on social media and what's happening in my business and all the things I hear about from clients. And whatever, however else I get my information, and then to come back into that community space and to be reminded again, yes, we're Indigenous people. Yes, we are stewards of the land. Yes, our children are sacred. It's exactly, I mean, I remind myself of that all the time, but to hear other people say it just really keeps filling my cup. And yeah, I've missed that so much, and really loved all of that interaction, all of those conversations, and just adorableness that we experienced at that event.
Yeah, as I was driving there, I kept getting turned around because there were so many streets blocked off, either for restaurants that were now doing things outside, right, over the last couple of years, or because the event had different routes, right? And at one point I got super frustrated. I was like, forget it. And I rolled my window down and I just listened for the drum. And I kind of followed it. And it's funny, but it's also true in like a very like spiritual sense, right? That missing that drum beat, missing that home beat. And I remember like a long time ago, I was at a powwow and there was this MC talking like they talk. And it was really fun to like listen to him talk. And then all of a sudden, there's all this chaos going around. And he just started talking about the drum beat and how you just always follow the drum beat home. And so every time I hear the drum, that's the guy I think about. I don't even remember his name. He was at like some community college powwow, like when I was 15. But I still remember that because it's so true, because then when I got there, like you're saying, right? Like you see people that you haven't seen in a really long time. You smell similar, familiar things. You see beadwork that you love. You see people that are cooking, right? Like all these things that you miss out on, that we've missed out on over the last 2.5 years. And we're still in a pandemic, so it's nice to be able to go someplace where it's a little bit safer, but still with our community. So it was fun. It was a fun event.
I think another thing that really impacted me was the first youth that got up and spoke. I didn't realize until, I don't, was it the next day that we were talking about this? And you were like, oh, yeah, that's so and so. And I was like, what?
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
I had not seen him since, he's probably what, 10 or 11. I haven't seen him since he was 6, maybe, at Nia summer camp. And I was like, that is not the same kid. No way. And then the next day on my Facebook from like, I don't know, 4 years ago, it was a picture of him and I with his little sister who was a infant at the time. And his head was on my shoulder. It was really cute. And that was from the Nia summer camp that he was in and I was helping out with. So it's just one of those things where, things come around in a circle. And I'm sure there was several youth there that I didn't realize who they were because it's been so many years and they grow so quick. I mean, it's both amazing and a little bit sad to know that you've missed out on like 2.5, 3, sometimes 4 years of these youth's lives. And you can't get that back, or adults too, So,
Yeah. Yeah, but you can really see it with the kids. That's for sure.
I mean, this is connected to what we're talking about, but a little bit different. So I have this friend I've had since first grade, and absolutely love her. And we've kind of, how sometimes in life you just lose contact with people. It's
Yeah.
nothing bad. It's just whatever. You get busy with your lives. And so I've dreamt of her 3 days, 3 nights in a row where I'm like, oh, I need to call her. Oh, I need to call her. And then today I fell asleep on the couch and I had a dream that I saw her on the street and we gave each other a hug. And I was like, oh, yeah, we're supposed to call each other and see each other in August. And she's like, yeah, we are. And I woke up and I emailed her and I was like, I hope this is like still her email. I don't know how else to get a hold of her. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that turns out. But like that time, and she's one of those
Mhm.
friends where in my opinion, in my perspective, like 50 years could go by and I would still love her. And I mean, we've been so close since first grade. So,
Mm. Yeah.
it's a long, long, long term friendship.
Yeah, I have a friend like that too. I usually only see her at Christmas time because I'm usually back, with my family or whatever. And her birthday happens to fall on New Year's Eve. And so she always got lost in that mix, but I was always around because our families were friends. And we've been friends since kindergarten. And like this last year, I was like, I haven't seen her in so long. So I text her and we've gone camping a few times, which was like the safest way for both of us to hang out. And I'm just really lucky that her and her husband like to camp. So we could do that. But yeah, it's so weird, like how time means nothing anymore. I guess this is a rolling into a pandemic check-in a bit. Really nicely.
Love those segues.
Yes. But yeah, there's so much going on in the world right now. There's so many things happening that are scary, things that we kind of knew were going to happen, and also like really shitty things. And so, like, I think part of me wants to talk about them because I feel like not enough people are just having conversations about what this is doing to ourselves, right? Like our communities and who we are. And so sometimes I feel like if we just name them, we can talk about them and we can figure out ways, just like we did with this pandemic, to stay connected, to stay in touch, to adapt things. So, like, we've got monkeypox that's popping back up again, which touches our community in a number of ways. We also have this massive heat wave headed our way that's starting today and kind of like going through a week or more coming up, which is really scary for a lot of us, especially those of us with complicated medical needs. And yeah, and then of course the US Supreme Court, I don't even know what's happening there. It's a lot. But we had a show and it was fun and we got to see people that we love. And we hope that we saw you there. And if we didn't, hopefully we'll see you soon. But how are you doing with all that? Do you want to talk about anything in particular, Shiloh?
Yeah. I think I'm always still trying to process things. Part of my maybe way of helping myself is to stick to thinking a little bit more locally and the things that I can help with, either that's through work or through friends. And maybe it's coping in a bad way. I don't really know. I'm trying not to think about it that way. I mean, we do what we do, we show up in the ways that we can. I definitely have these moments. It happened to me a little bit this week where I feel a bit listless. I feel like, am I depressed right now? Because I just am like, every day is the same kind of, where Journey and I are getting up and we're doing stuff. But I used to be really busy and I'm still busy in a way, but not outside of the house for the most part. So I've been thinking about ways to vary my routine, and I miss in person conversation. And I've had a little bit more of it this summer, but I really miss my friends and it was great to be at that event, but it also made me realize I'm an extrovert and I need more of that. But still, like, the pandemic is terrible. Like, it's really bad. And sort of living in this space where people, or I guess like the larger country, or I don't really know how to, like, people are just like, I'm just going to go about my business, which is fine. Like, everybody needs to handle it the way they can handle it, I guess. But I worry about the long-term effects of people getting COVID multiple times, because
Yeah.
some of the emerging data doesn't look good.
No,
Like,
it
it doesn't
doesn't.
look good for people's immune systems.
Mm-mm.
And, there is some speculation, and again, it's still speculation, that maybe there's like Japanese encephalitis I heard of that's in Australia now. There's hemorrhagic fever that is now showing up in Florida, I think. We have monkeypox. So there's these kind of like not weird viruses, but like unusual ones that there's been some speculation if that has to do with so many people getting COVID and our collective immune systems just not being able to recover very fast from COVID. And
Yeah.
so then that's sort of like making this situation where people are getting these viruses and other infections and diseases that we normally wouldn't get, or it wouldn't spread, right? And I'm not saying that like this new hemorrhagic fever and this encephalitis and things like that are going to be huge. I don't know what's happening and stuff, but still it's disconcerting. And I worry that, like, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, we're going to have a lot more studies, and it's going to be like, that there's a lot more impact to this virus than just it being a virus that, sucks and kills some people and makes some people sick for a long time. And the rest of us are just annoyed for not being able to do anything for 2.5 years. I'm really worried that like there's going to be some weird shit that comes out of this, that there's going to be some developing viruses that maybe wouldn't have developed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I worry about people's ability to work. I worry about people's ability to recover from other things. Yeah, that has me kind of worried. And just
Yeah.
the fact that we don't have the infrastructure in this country to support people with disabilities now. We,
Yeah.
have not been a country that's been interested socially or in a governmental way or any media way in supporting people with disabilities and creating a lot less barriers for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, even during this pandemic, it showed not only do we not have the infrastructure in place, like people that are making decisions are actively okay throwing some folks away, right? Like, and not in an even conscious way. Like, that's just part of how are socialized. It's like when we look at numbers, we see 10% is less than 90%, right? And so that's okay. Instead of understanding that those 10%, that's a lot of people, right? And yeah, I think like the more that we get into understanding the impacts of long COVID and the new Omicron variants, the more we understand that the more frequently we get COVID, the more kind of fucked up our bodies get. And that is scary. You know, and then of course, monkeypox coming into the mix is it's not a new virus. We know this one is, has existed for a long time. And in many countries, it is an endemic. But, the US stopped vaccinating folks against this particular set of viruses, the smallpox variety, a long time ago because we had eradicated it in this country, which is also another weird thing to think about, right? Like, so we're done, the rest of the world isn't, and so we're going to be okay, which just aligns perfectly with that weird American exceptionalism that we spout in this country of like, if we got it, it's fine. And it's the same methodology that we're applying to COVID with vaccinations, right? Instead of understanding that a global perspective means that not only do other people see health benefits, but also we do, right? Like your health impacts my health, which I am sure I have said ad nauseum over the last 2 years. But it feels like if we're not on a broken record about it, like people forget, which seeing the rest of the country, like you said, kind of feel like it's over while we have all these other things coming in. It's kind of scary. And then we have just regular things that we have to deal with, like wildfire season and heat and the increase of those things due to climate change. It's a lot, and we're here, and you're not alone. And that's why we're talking about it, so that you don't feel so alone. Right, Shiloh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's always been problems. There's been monumentous problems especially for certain groups of people that have caused like intergenerational trauma, and people have still worked through it. And it doesn't mean that it felt great and it was completely resolved and everything was amazing. Yet our ancestors do have wisdom for us. We do have things that we can learn from them, that we can fall back onto. We do have things in our communities that we like. Community aid, is been in a lot of our communities since the beginning of time. It's just part of being who we are. And so I think it's still holding on to that, still taking care of each other, still connecting, still sharing with each other. I mean, this is one of the ways we can share with people around us. Brianna and I can, is talking to you. And hopefully, that you're not alone, and that we're thinking of these things, and we're connecting to people. And you know the global warming piece is really worrisome, but it's also connected to potentially, if not already, this isn't my area of knowledge very well, but like, as polar caps melt, as areas become more accessible, I worry about viruses and bacteria that haven't been around for modern humans. That makes me really concerned. I read something recently about, I feel like it was somewhere in the United States, but I could be wrong, where someone was like, "Oh, there's all these bacteria no one's been exposed to for in a cave somewhere." And I'm like, "Do not take those out and research them.
Right.
Like,
Just leave it
please
alone.
don't." Like, I'm like, I know we have some people in our communities who are like scientists and they really want to know the answer to every fucking thing. And I'm like, it's this like really weird, like imperialism. I
Hmm.
think I'm sure this is coming to my mind right now. So I haven't had time to really like think this through carefully, but it feels like a type of imperialism where it's like, I need to know all the answers to this thing right fucking now without really considering the implications of like killing everyone. And I'm not trying to talk about like some post-apocalyptic movie, although sometimes those stories and movies are there for a reason and for a lesson. It makes me think of like things like the museum, right? Where we have Native American quote artifacts or art. And it's like, you don't fucking need to know everything about this drum. Like, it doesn't need to sit in your storage area in your basement, Museum of Chicago, where indigenous people who actually those things are their relatives, it
Hmm.
belongs to them, but it's sitting in your fucking basement. But they don't have that thing anymore because it's sitting in your fucking basement. Like, nothing's going to happen to you that you don't know about it, or that like other white people don't get to see that. Like, it's not going to be an impact upon the richness of your life in terms of like talking about the fact that indigenous people that would use that thing, that have that as part of their spiritual and cultural beliefs and traditions since time immemorial, should be the ones who have those things because they actually use them and they've belonged to their ancestors. Like, it's a little bit like that for me, where I'm like, this like pursuit of knowledge by any means possible makes me really worried. I mean, it makes me worried that they could find some weird shit on this planet. Also, like, people will be like, "Oh, and then they're going to bring the satellite back with like rocks from like who fucking knows where." I'm like, "Are you dumb?" Like, don't bring that stuff back here. Like, you think you have containment? Like, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole, but it just makes me so fucking furious and very nervous. And like, I don't trust those people. Like, they may have the best intentions possible, but like, let's go back to impact versus intention. I fucking
Yes.
will be pissed if I die from some rando fucking virus some asshole brought up from like 6,000-meter cave somewhere because they wanted to get like their PhD or Nobel Prize or some stupid bullshit.
Don't
Like, I'm
you
gonna be pissed.
do you first of all, you never have to apologize, but do you remember those Mr. Yuck stickers from the 80s?
Yes, I do.
Don't you ever just want to like go to places and put a Mr. Yuck sticker and be like, this is a
Yes.
no.
Right?
This is a no.
And I feel as indigenous people, that should be like fucking understood. Like, when
But
we say, don't do this thing, do not do it, don't do it, I feel like other people should be like, they probably know what they're talking about.
I'm laughing because I watched this TikTok of this white lady who was like, I heard this noise outside by my trash cans, and everything in my body wanted to go see what it was. But I just want to thank Black and Indigenous TikTok because I didn't go. Because when the noise comes, you just stay put because your curiosity will
Yep.
kill you. Right. And there, I think what you're kind of like getting at is maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the difference between the pursuit of knowledge and the understanding of wisdom.
Yes.
Right? Like wisdom knows when to just leave it alone. Right? Like there are some things that are beyond us, and that's an okay thing. And knowledge is like, I need to know everything all the time, whatever the cause, whatever the case, whatever the cost. And like those things can go in tandem, but there has to be a balance. And we have lost balance in some ways. I think because knowledge gets wrapped up in capital and
Yeah.
capitalism, right? Like understanding the world is a thing that like my brain constantly wants to do. Being dyslexic means that like my brain is constantly trying to figure out things that don't need to be figured out all the time for no reason. And that's why I go on tangents most of my life. And there is a balance to be had, right? There is something to be said about like understanding knowledge and separating that from capital,
Yeah.
right? Like, what is the purpose for this knowledge? Why are we going down this rabbit hole? Does the rabbit want us there? Right? Like, and those kinds of things. And also, what I'm hearing from you too is there's this also balance of our ancestors left us a freaking roadmap. Why are we trying to tell them that they're wrong by doing it our way?
Yeah.
Right. And that, like, that bullheadedness, I think, is just married to capital and capitalism.
Yeah. And I'm like, is it that you want a virus or a bacteria named after you? Like, write a fucking book, like do a piece of artwork, like, I don't know, finance a fucking theater, put your name on it. Like, I don't care. Don't bring that shit out of the depths of where it's supposed to be. If creator wanted it all out in the open, then it would be all out in the open. Like, it's just like this lack of self-preservation that I'm just like, how did
Yes.
you all survive anyway? Like, clearly off the backs of indigenous and black people, but like, um
But
you would
I think that's the point, right? That's the point. There is no self-preservation
there isn't.
because there hasn't had to be, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not a thing that as a culture that America or even, like whiteness has had to think about, right?
Or how about let's think about it in this term: mediocre white men
Yes.
and how they fucking get to their positions of power, and they stay in those positions of power even though they might be complete assholes, they might be 150% incompetent, they might be terrible at their jobs in multiple ways, super fucking harmful, but the people around them keep them in power because they don't want other people to get hurt, because they don't want this person to unravel everything. And because, when that happens in a system, that people of color, queer people, disabled people are going to be the ones run over and harmed by some stupid, mediocre white man who's too insecure and doesn't realize he's a fucking problem. Right? I've seen this many times and I'm like, quit helping these people. Stop helping them, because they get to continue to have these positions of power because people don't, one, maybe want to upset them, or two, don't want to have other people hurt. And I'm like, stop helping them. If they're fools and they're not good at their jobs and they're harmful, let them fuck it up so people can see what they're doing wrong. And maybe that's a little fucking harsh, but I'm like, knock it off. And I feel like that's like a microcosm of this macrocosm. And the other thing I want to say about this pursuit of like bacteria and viruses and weird whatever shit they want to find here on this planet and in other planets, it reminds me of that feeling of like the exotic and of like adventure and like Columbus, and like, I'm going to find this route and I'm going to find these people, and everything I find belongs to me and I get to exploit it for, whatever reasons I want. And in a way, I think that is like a similar thing of like, oh, I'm going to pursue these fucking weird bacteria no one's ever found, and I'm going to be the one who finds them and probably kill all of us, right? Or make us all really sick. And I just, for ego, for I want my name on something, for I want to be this adventurer, I want this American dream of like building this thing and living in the academy, and all of that crap is bullshit. It's all colonial bullshit.
You know what this makes me want to do?
What?
I want a Mr. Yuck sticker, but like with our faces on it, with you just pointing at people. No. Stop it. Knock it off. And they can just be knock it off stickers.
Stop.
And they'll be hot pink. And then when people go places, they just and you know what? We can make them business cards too, so that when we run into those mediocre white men, we can just hand them a business card that says knock it off, and it'll be Shilo and me, our faces, and we'll just be pointing at them, and you all
Epic.
know how the point is happening. You don't have to see us right now to know what's happening. Knock
Can
it
we
off.
make it a scratch and sniff so it smells like sage or
Oh my
cedar?
God, yes.
So it kind of like smudges them a little bit, and then like maybe we'll clear their minds of their bullshit, and they can be like, oh yeah, I need to stop this right now and
Right
get
now.
right with myself.
Yes. And then we can even put on the other side of the business cards ways to get right with yourself.
Right.
And it can just be a top 4 list.
Get it together. These are not a performative list. This isn't a performance for you. No one's gonna come by and like
Number 1,
applaud you.
you should be number 1 should be give the person who gave you this card $20. And then y'all can help us fill in the rest.
Yeah, become patrons of our Patreon. But you get nothing in return. You're just gonna get
Find your closest native person and hand them your house keys. I'm just kidding.
with the hashtag land back. You're funny. I mean,
that's a good idea though. That's all I'm saying.
Idea. I mean, some people are doing that with their land though. It's not enough people, but some are. Oh my gosh. I love that about us. Just calling it like it is,
Yeah, I feel like we got way off track and I loved where we went. So,
I mean, that's the great thing though about just us having the minds we have, right? Our non-linear indigenous brains. Like we both have quote learning disabilities in the colonial system, which are, really just means we have different ways of thinking about things and different ways of perception, which are important. There should be a lot of different ways of perceiving things.
It's true.
And also I just want to shout out to those of you who know a mediocre white man who we were talking about. Like I might have been thinking about some people in particular, but we all know somebody like that. And then we also have BIPOC people who are intense advocates of white supremacy. We all know those people too, who are like really into white supremacy and power. So
we all have unlearning to do in this world.
We all have our moments. I mean, I have moments where I'm like, wait, what? What did I just do? Whoa. That is not what I meant. I need to think about that. So yeah, we all have our moments.
But this is why you have community, so you can have those moments and then talk it through.
Oh, I was doing a training recently. It was my training on conflict, critique / feedback and harm. And I'm like, what's the third thing we talk about? Oh, I was talking about consent and how you like to get feedback. And I was talking about the like different ways, that you might think about how you like getting feedback in certain such situations. And I always use myself as an example as the sandwich where I'm like, say something nice that you think I'm doing well, then give me nicely the critique of how I could do better. And then tell me that you still love me because I have abandonment issues and childhood trauma. And so I still need to know that you love me and I'm okay.
Yes.
And then so many people laugh every time I say that. And I'm like, I know you're laughing, but like, honestly, that's real. Like I'm being 1,000%. And I think some of the laughter might be like, oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. There has to be half that room that's like, oh, me too. But I'm too like, it's socially unacceptable to say that, or I can't do that in the workplace, or right. And it's like,
no, you can.
Also, like, there's so much about professionalism that we could go down. That could be a whole
we could spend a whole season on that.
But in particular, the difference between like emotional reservedness, right? And like how we can start talking about like love and talking about like the emotions that happen with us and to us and around us, and how strongly they're policed and who they're policed for. Just if you look at that little piece, you can see such a big difference in community. And like, imagine what it would look like if we actually could talk about it in a workplace where that was part of our work, was to understand those parts of ourselves that we're bringing with us.
That's what I try to do in a lot of my work. I mean, in different, different ways that we can do it. But like when I'm given pretty free range, which in some situations I have been given free range, which, maybe some of the upper leadership, if they knew some of the things we had been talking about, might have been like, and it wasn't something inappropriate, but it's like, it is talking about our emotions and it is trying to show up as authentically as we can in that space. And I would be like, oh my gosh, I love you so much. And I often say that, I'll tell people, even people that I haven't, really trained before, that's like our first time over Zoom. And I'm like, thank you so much for the work you do. I see, how much you bring to it, how passionate you are. And I just love you so much. And like, you can tell people are like, whoa, like that, Shilo. But if I stick with those people and we get to know each other, they eat it up. They love it. They love to tell each other, or when it's appropriate, like, I love you. And there was this one time I had been working at this government agency. This is before the pandemic. I still work with these folks. And I had maybe been doing 6 months to 9 months of work there. And I had an in-person meeting, and it was me and Peggy, and then like 4 other men. And so we do this like meeting, and it was like a typical, like, come in, do the agenda and leave, which annoyed me. And I was like, ugh. And I think things have definitely gotten better now, but like, anyways, these 4 men, they got up to leave, and Peggy and I were going to keep meeting with each other. And they get up and they're standing by the door, but they're still inside the room, and they're kind of in a circle together. And they're like talking to each other and like, I love you. I love you so much. And they're like telling each other how much they love each other. And then they did like this group hug, and they're like, yeah, I love you too. And they were like slapping each other's backs, like not in a like weird broy way, but just like in an authentically like men saying I love you in a workplace. And then they just like left and went on to their day. And I was like, they're growing up. They're growing up and talking about their emotions, telling each other they love each other. And so it was great.
That sounds awesome.
And those folks still tell each other they love each other. It was beautiful.
Awesome.
It was beautiful to see. And there's even more of the people at that agency who tell each other they love each other. It's gorgeous. I love it.
That should happen more.
Those people who are listening, they know who they are. They know who they are, and they know that I love them. So I have to reel myself in sometimes because I feel like a mama bear at times about them. So like that, this is the agency. I don't know if I've said it on this podcast. This is the agency where one of the people, he's this guy I just absolutely love him. He's a white guy. Love him so much. And one time he goes, yeah, Shilo, you're like our auntie of this agency. Like, you're like our auntie. And I was like, oh, I kind of am. And so, but then sometimes it makes my mama bear worse, because I'm like, as your auntie, like, I just want to go to like higher up leadership and be like, and then blah, blah, blah. And I can't, do that. I have to, you've had to calm me down several times from going full mama bear on some people's asses in some situations where I'm like, ah! But
it's
you
a
have
balance.
to understand. Yeah, you have to understand your plate. Like, I don't mean like my place, but like, what, you don't want to make things worse for people.
Right.
And they have to, do their own stuff. You can't always fight their battles for them.
That's part of the balance of being an auntie too, is that like there's an overwhelming urge to fix everything. And also like, that's not always our job.
Yeah. Do I want to lecture people sometimes? Absolutely. Will that lecturing help? Absolutely not. Will it make me feel better in that moment? Absolutely. Will it make the situation worse? Probably. So yeah, it's hard.
That and like thinking through the consequences of advocating for someone.
Yeah.
Right. Or thinking through the consequences of like, what are the unintended consequences going to be with these actions? And that's part of the ever-growing caseload of auntiness.
Oh, right. The caseload.
The caseload of auntiness.
The caseload gets really big sometimes, really overwhelming. And then I have to call up Brianna and be like, I need some help. I'm overwhelmed. But sometimes I'm overwhelmed with amazingness too, It's sometimes hard though, like doing, I don't want to speak for you, so I'll only speak for myself. I don't think you'd like it if I spoke for you. Like the like business work that I do, which is really just life work, right? I mean, people put it in the category of business. It's about relationship, it's about like doing healing work, right? Is that it gets so intense because it is healing work, it is liberation work. I do get close to people, I do want the best for them, I do want to see organizations and government agencies reduce their harm internally and externally. And it gets really intense sometimes when you see stuff go down and you're just like, stop, that sticker, stop it right now. Like, stop,
Yes.
and you have to just kind of pull back or wait or, help in other ways because I mean, even though I feel like the spirit should give me my own wand to make everything better, I'd probably hurt somebody with it very quickly because I'd get irritated with them. So, you know, the spirits are not going to give me that. It's intense
It is.
doing this work this way. And people could say, like, oh, well, and I talked with another consulting firm a few months ago, and I could tell that she was like judging me, because she does her work very differently from me. I could tell she thought, oh, you're just too close. And in some ways, maybe I am. Yet this is how it works for me to do the work. This is what the ancestors want me to do.
Well, and it hits different when you hold the identities of the
Yeah,
folks that you are there to support. It just is different.
it does.
It's very different. It's very emotional work, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we've mentioned on the podcast before that we share similar work. And I think this is true in all of my jobs. That like that deep, intense work is there because you've been there,
Yeah.
right? Like you were in those positions and you want better outcomes for the people that are there now. And that's deep, intense work, not only on like a emotional level, as in that's like really heavy and there's a lot to process and there's complicated emotions that are attached to it, but also on a spiritual level,
Yeah.
just like having to set that down sometimes, you know, and like not really being able to in some ways, and like figuring out how to take a break here and there and like what that looks like while you're also moving into, constantly wanting to move closer to liberation in a way that is benefiting you and everyone that you love, right? Like that's a heavy lift.
Yeah. And it feels like a not possible lift at times. I
It
think there are
does.
moments when it's just not something that's going to happen in a particular situation for a while, where it just something has to work its way out, or it's just the timing's not quite right and you have to figure out what to do in that moment. Like, do you step away while people are trying to figure their stuff out? Do you check in every once in a while? Like, what does that mean in that moment? And I think it's different for each moment and each person. I think also I have to remind myself, like, I'm not here to fix everything for these people, like
Yeah.
whoever they are. Like, I can't do it right as one person, but especially like that's not for me to do. But I certainly can support, I certainly can offer as much as I can and, cheerlead people through and, help dry their tears and help listen and validate them when things get difficult. And just to like have that, like to remind myself that like I can't fix everything, because sometimes I feel like I have that expectation on myself and I'm like, whoa, 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 like that's only going to harm me actually. And that's not what I'm here for.
Well, I think society puts that on
Yeah.
us a lot, right? Society puts that on people they see as women a lot, and femme folk. And I also think this is a really good time to highlight and remind like ourselves and others that boundaries are super healthy.
Yeah.
Boundaries are incredibly important and they are deeply interwoven with how our ancestors survived.
Yeah.
Right? There are limits to the things that we can do, and then we must leave them to work themselves out. And then we move on and we do, do our work somewhere else. We
Yeah.
only have so much energy in a day, we only have so much energy in our life. And we go to the places where we can do the most good, not in a way that's exclusive of those little victories, because those are very important, but as
Yeah.
in, where does my energy live? Where am I going to put it? And the intentionality with which you make those decisions really impact the outcomes. And it also really dictates like your own sustainability,
Yeah.
right? And your own sustainability, because like I mentioned before, all of our health is interconnected, right? Like
Mhm.
your own sustainability is impacting the entire community sustainability.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's not on us to fix everything because it is all of us to fix everything, right?
And
And
also, many of us did not make these systems. Our
right.
ancestors did not make these systems. We're trying to do like harm reduction. I know I'm trying to do harm
Yes.
reduction. I mean, I think a lot of us can directly see some of these policies, especially governmental policies, how they really impact both sometimes helpful and sometimes not helpful in our community. And when you see policy making where you're like, whoa, 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 stop, 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 that they're just going for it, right? Foot is on the pedal at 80 miles per hour, and you're like, stop, 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 and they can't stop it once they get to a certain, speed. And it's just, and I think this is a whole podcast. I think it might be helpful to talk about like community engagement, because I feel
Yeah.
like that is something that so many people in, I would say, government agencies in particular, but other agencies as well, do not at all understand community engagement. Like most people have no fucking clue what community engagement actually is. And it's just kind of like there's almost a unwillingness to like understand it. And I think that has to do with white supremacy and not wanting to give up control that white supremacy brings policymakers, planners, people who are in decision making capacities over communities. And I think another thing I see is that government agencies or orgs also will hire people of color to be the sort of like bridge to their communities. And that's a really hard position to put people into. And I think is very similar to what we've been talking about, of like you directly experiencing that impact and then trying to advocate, but then you're also seen as the man, right? The government agency. And if anybody in that agency does anything to impact that community, your ass is on the line with your community. And I think that people who don't have those community connections have no clue the amount of pressure and impact that has. And yeah, and just again, like a disbelief that when any of us who are part of, communities that are like, quote, targeted or historically marginalized, like we're lying, not telling the truth if it doesn't align with white supremacy. And I fucking hate that. And I just feel, I'm like, I think we just need to call that out to people in decision making settings. Like, you're not believing us because of white supremacy. Yep. Because you don't want to lose power, because you don't want to stop, slow down, and put intention into your decision making processes, because it'll, quote, complicate them. And you have like these goals you've set or these imaginary time constraints. Like, fuck that. Get over it. Like, our community's health and wellness is more important than your fucking made up deadline.
Yes. I feel like that's a really good place to wrap up. that felt like a really good end point, like a good exclamation point on the end of that sentence. Yes. Yeah, I feel like that was pretty good. I feel like you got to go on a bit of a roller coaster with us, and I'm sure that we will have more to talk about in this respect. Boundaries are always a thing that Shilo and I are talking about, so I feel like this is going to be a reoccurring conversation. So, but for now, maybe that's it. How do you feel, Shilo? You got more to say? Probably.
I always have more to say, but no, I think that's a good ending point. I think we know when we're going to wrap it up. So, love you all so much. Thank you for listening and always being here for us and supporting our work. Feel free to let others know about our podcast. And yeah.
Also, if you have questions for us or topics that you want us to kind of like talk about, feel free to message us. We have an Instagram, we have a Gmail. I think we have a Facebook. I don't know how to get
Facebook.
I don't know how to get on there if we do. But I mean, I know how to get on Facebook. I just wouldn't know how to get on ours.
Someday we'll have a website. or something. And I think in the future, like Brianna and I have definitely been talking about merch. So watch out for that. I just did a little design for us, and
Oh, it's on our Instagram.
it is, if you want to see what I did. Yeah. So we're going to be slowly building things. It takes time because we're very busy people, just like you. But yes, let us know if you have questions or comments, or you need advice, or there's topics that you're interested in, where we would love to engage with you. Your Two Spirit Aunties, all lowercase, all one word, at gmail.com is our email.
And our Instagram is at Your Two Spirit Aunties. So you should be able to remember that because they're all the same thing.
Yeah. And I think you just literally Google it.
Yes.
Someone told me that our podcast like pops right up if you Google Your Two Spirit Aunties. Someone was like, good SEO. And I was like, yeah, I had nothing to do with that. Yay.
Don't even know what that means. Thanks.
I think it's something enhanced operation.
I don't think it really matters. We're coming up on Google. Just Google us.
Supreme ethical operations.
Oh.
No, that's not what it means.
Yeah, no, I didn't think so.
Specialized. Okay, have a great day.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.